right.
Not worth going back and looking at
What?
the tapes.
Let's get started,
There you go.
since it's 6 o'clock. Good evening. It is 6 o'clock on Wednesday, April 23rd, and I'm calling this meeting of the Chelmsford Planning Board to order. My name is Chris LaValle, and I'm the chair of the board. Tonight, we'll be following the posted agenda. This meeting tonight is both in person and in Zoom, via Zoom. If Zoom fails at any point in the meeting, we will continue to the meeting in person. The meeting is being televised live and recorded via Chelmsford Telemedia and will be available on their website and on YouTube. So the first item on the agenda tonight is public input. Public input should be limited to issues pertaining to the jurisdiction of the planning board that are not currently the subject of a pending public hearing. And is there anyone in person or on Zoom who wishes to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the first agenda item. 5559 Middlesex Street. Evan, do you want to give a little bit of background on this one?
I can. I believe the proponents are also with us this evening. My background is fairly brief. Several years ago, the property was acquired by Manzo. They're the ones who are making the formal request to the board. The background here is that, I think they mentioned the narrative, but several weeks ago, they had a particular tenant who they were engaged with, and they happened to be more retail-oriented. And IA, which this particular mill is located, does not allow retail uses. The mill across the street where the establishment is not zoned IA. That does allow retail. Historically, the mills were somewhat complementary. They were able to kind of coexist and not compete with one another. Over the years, the planning board has talked about mill overlay zoning districts, encouraging residential. I had explained to you that over the years, neither property owner had specifically expressed that interest. That still seems to be the case at this point, but what's clear is that the Manzo Mill is, attempting to update in accordance with the market trends and demands. So I think, why don't you join us at the podium and you can provide some further insight.
Thank you, Evan. Hi, I'm Joe Freeman, and I'm part of the ownership of the mill. This is Pedro Camara, who's our property manager at the mill. We've owned it just over a year. I'd specifically like to thank Evan and Jose Negron for being really helpful and available for us, so we're able to just be transparent and talk to them ahead of time and say, hey, here's somebody that's approached us, a tenant. What do you think? What should we do? We have a number of tenants. Most all of them are small, sort of local businesses from either from Chelmsford or Lowell or Lawrence or Westford, but all sort of in this area. We've got businesses as small as 250 feet. Just a little office. We call it an incubator idea where you could bring in a small business, try to get started. We try to provide a really affordable environment for the tenants. We've invested in the property. We've gone in. I heard you talking about gardening. I'm kind of a crazy gardener, so we've gone in and we've got an account at Mahoney's, and we go in and we do all kinds of hanging baskets and gardening, and we've really tried to fix the place up and make it kind of more appealing and attractive. And it just seems that in the time that we live now, 2025, which sounds crazy to say, but that really the zoning that in talking and working with Evan and Jose that we think is more appropriate is the CBLT as opposed to the IA. It would allow us to continue to accommodate our existing tenants, but also be available for more retail-ish, let's call them, type businesses that are approaching us often, and that's really kind of where we're coming from.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Because this relates to the next agenda item, I would like to try and keep this focused on questions and concerns related to this specific property. And then for the more broader context, we can go to the next agenda item. But for this, right now, just try and keep it focused.
Yeah, I could you give a description of the abutting properties and what's on them? I mean, I know the spot, but I don't know the backside of it very well.
Right, so.
I mean, I know you got one road on one side of you that's got some residential, I believe.
So there's Princeton, you come
There's
over
Princeton,
come
and
over
you've
the
got-
bridge there.
Yep.
And then you come on down there, establishment and the mill that's right there is
Yeah.
there. And then as you keep going past that, you do have some residential in there.
There's a right turn up there, yeah.
And then there's the fire station. And then as you keep going up, you get up to Vinyl Square,
Yeah.
where, there's the restaurants and the various things that are up there in Vinyl Square.
Well, I was just curious, in particular, what abuts this property, because
Yeah,
I
like,
want to know if
Just to the
changing.
north, that little
Gay Street is residential.
Yeah,
street.
Gay Street is
Correct.
residential. That's a bunch of multifamilies. I think it's
It's zoned, I
two-family
believe,
mill
RC,
housing.
two-family RC.
Yeah.
Middlesex Street, the direct abutters are residential, although it is zoned IA. This area here is residential on the ground. And then to the south, it's residential, and a well-established residential neighborhood.
It's a little bit of a triangle in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the river that runs with the power station back
Yep.
on the other side there. And then one side comes up Middlesex, and then the other side comes up Princeton. And then the other border would be Gay Street, as Evan points out.
So it sounds like that rezoning it wouldn't be any more inconsistent with what's around it than what you got right now. That's what I'm poking at.
I would agree with
In
that.
terms of redeveloping, I mean, do you have any thoughts, retail, and I know my CPA's in your building, for instance, and he recently opened up his own shop coming from a big firm. So I'm in and out of there, not infrequently. It's a lovely property. I'm wondering if you were, I mean, I think there's a church maybe in there.
Correct.
And if
that-
you were to do more of a retail element, do you imagine carving out a portion of the structures and making that a retail area?
Good question. Retail tends to be more of a first floor use.
Yeah,
People tend to not really want as much to go up
Right.
a couple of flights and try to find some retail up there. Right now, if I sort of described retail-ish, I'm going to call it again.
Yeah.
We've got a plumbing supply, Granite pump plumbing supply, and they sell out to not
Plumbers.
so much retail, but to plumbers and to people that come in and get it, and then they go to your house and fix the plumbing. We've got the golf that's in there that's kind of retail-ish. Pappas Golf has been there for many, many years, I think.
they sell golf clubs or?
You go in, and he's a golf pro. They have some simulators that you can go and like hit into a net and get coached and, that sort of thing. There's some softball, some girls softball that's there coaching kids with that. There's some yoga.
There are two buildings
3 actually.
that are carved out on this side. Is it just are you just looking for that larger building, or are you looking for in the green as well? Because I noticed that that was highlighted with green. Is that the same property?
Yeah. Is that where the dance people are?
Clear as I look at that, Evan, are you clear? We have,
Yep.
we call the buildings A, B, and C.
Yep.
Just so the post and the delivery people know where to go.
I'm not sure why the green is highlighted.
I was
Is that
gonna
where
ask
the
the same
dance
thing.
people are?
That's where the indoor rec is.
Okay. Because on the GIS, it looks like a different property.
Excuse me.
You own the main building and then the one next to the bridge.
Correct.
Is that
Okay.
one parcel or two separate parcels? Do you know?
One parcel, I believe, Evan.
Okay. But that's
Oh.
that's
Then
what
there's
he's,
a third building, a fourth building in there that's McKittrick building that we do not own, that's owned by someone else.
yeah, that's over
Is that the
here.
green one?
No, that's in the back right
Yeah.
corner.
Okay.
Oh,
What's in there? Is that,
Last I knew, it was like a warehouse, self-storage.
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Could I just,
Okay.
I was going to ask, if you were to go in like a direction with some retail, any idea on like any concerns for parking, or you feel the site has?
We own a number of these mills around, and that's a good question, John. Parking is often a big issue for us. It's not at this mill.
Oh, it's,
We've got significant amount of parking here. There's 3 different lots. As you come over the bridge on Princeton, if you take the first right in, there's a big lot there. If you go past that, there's a second entrance up there where we've done a new sign that says the landing at Chelmsford Mills. There's another, almost 2 parking lots there. And then there's another little one around back off of Gay Street.
That lot does get pretty crowded with dance classes coming in and out.
Yeah,
cycling
at the
through.
end of the day, you've got a lot of moms bringing the kids in and out.
And dads.
Yeah,
'Cause I do bring my kids.
right, fair. And they've just extended their lease for a number of years. So we're happy that they're there and staying.
In your narrative, you do mention, I'm trying to find it, that you've got current tenants that have more traditional industrial uses like light manufacturing, production, storage, warehouse. What types of, what businesses are those?
So there's a business, I'm always have to get the names. So LTD is one of the businesses. They've got these sort of high-tech vending machines that are almost got AI in them. Smart, they'll take your credit card, you know, do all sorts of things. There's another fellow who's from MIT. Help me with them. Yes, Solid Materials. They do some light manufacturing in there that's pretty high-tech. They're real bright kind. I'm not quite sure what they're talking about when I go in there with the MIT crowd.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And sort of our goal there, I just don't want to
Go ahead.
keep going on, but we really value the existing tenants that are there. We've literally owned it 1 year, almost to the day right now. And we've gone in and really tried to support the existing tenants and get them to, in our business, there's a lot of value in tenure, how long people will stay. There's not much value in somebody that's only going to stay month to month. The banks don't like it. The investors don't like it. You want somebody that's going to be there for 5 years and you know, okay, we've spent the money, we've got the space the way they want it, and they're going to stay there and pay their rent. So we've really tried to keep everybody that we've got there and then grow it beyond that. And it's mostly small local businesses we're kind of growing it with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one, really to Evan. Are there any uses in there now that would become problematic by switching from IA to CBLT? Or would they all be,
I mean, it sounds like they may have some light manufacturing in there.
yeah,
And I think later on tonight, we're going to be talking about a new definition for light manufacturing specific to the CB light. You know, in the event there's a business in there that doesn't meet a new definition. They're pre-existing non-conforming. I think what's unique about this property is you're not necessarily hearing that their future plans are demolition and new construction.
No.
Right, so
Not at all.
that's very unlike most of your other properties where you're trying to encourage and facilitate redevelopment. So the mill is just it's really the use table where they're gonna benefit directly with the retail and the restaurant component,
Yeah.
and you will no longer be allowed to pursue traditional industrial, which you don't have a lot of anyway.
No contractor yards.
Right, so for them, it's likely a really good exchange.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Michael, the thing I would say is.
Could you get up to the microphone?
sorry.
Thanks.
Sorry about that. We think these mills they are historic, but we actually think they're really beautiful. And we think what happened is that people came in and tried to modernize them and put drop ceilings in them and do things like that. And we feel like the real beauty is in the way it was originally done. We think people are attracted to the big 9-foot tall windows, to the big white, yellow pine beams, to the wood floors. So we try to really kind of take it back to what it originally was, but make it so that the bathrooms are nice. And
Yeah, I would agree with you on that, by the way. I'm sort of a fan
Yeah.
of old mills.
Both mills are beautiful.
Yeah, they're gorgeous.
yeah, they are
They're
really
gorgeous.
nice.
Makes perfectly good sense to me. I just want to make sure that we don't,
Yeah.
by doing this, we wouldn't open up a can of worms that we hadn't
Yeah.
anticipated.
What's your timeline in terms, it sounded like there's a prospective tenant right now that's.
we've got a few that are interested right now. And so our timeline is as soon as we can do it. And I don't understand exactly how the rules, but I know that once it happens, there's like a waiting period, something like that. I'm not quite sure how it all works. But sooner the better for us
Okay.
in terms of, helping these small businesses come in and open up.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there any way that I can't imagine this getting done before fall town meeting.
No, I think what we would end up doing is kind of, as we're continuing the discussion with Kate's Corner, kind of keeping this site in mind.
Oh, yeah.
And then
maybe
as
the
we're
area
looking
around it.
at
Yeah.
the properties to rezone,
add it to
looking
the
at
list.
Kate's Corner and then looking at this area as well.
Okay. I
To
mean,
make
but-
sure that, and then we could do all of it at the same time to
Yeah.
town meeting.
That would be ideal.
I have to say, taking it another step further, and I know you want to move along, so I'll just be brief, but I've been thinking personally about these mills and the one down by the softball field as well, and that whole area as would be a great place for something along the lines of, the place that closed in Lowell, Mill Number 5.
Yeah.
I know, there's a place, the Boston Market in Boston. I was there last couple weeks ago. And, those places that are small spaces, they have a room for crafts, they have room for making candles and restaurants, and
We have a number of those in some of our other mills. In Hudson, we've got a place called Knotty Pine, and it's literally 30 or 40 local businesses. It could be honey making,
Right.
it's candles, it's art, and the advantage of that sort of thing and being able to do that is that the small business doesn't have to have a full-time employee to run the thing. If you've got to pay somebody $50,000 to $60,000, there goes your small business. If you can have sort of in a collaborative group like that, it's been super successful for us down in Hudson. But like Mill Number 5, we see that, and most of these mills, they're taking them and going residential with them. That's kind of where, there's a lot of money if you want to go that way, but that's not what we do. We keep them the way they are. We want to have sort of build communities is what we call them.
Right.
And I think going towards this type of zoning would help with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Very much so. It's a good
All right.
example.
Thank you very much. All right. We will move on now to the Kate's Corner discussion. I want to try and limit this to a little bit over a half hour, if at all possible. And What I did, Evan, yeah, so if you can pull up the last slide deck. So what I did is I took, speaking of slide decks, is Anita on yet?
She is.
Okay, great. And Sarita's on as well. All right, so what I did is I took the slide deck that Anita sent out. I added a couple yellow or green notes where I thought that we had discussed corrections, and wanted to just try and go through the dimensions, the use table, to finalize those tonight, if we can. And then I also wanted to talk about a proposed redefining of light manufacturing that might help us out in this case as well. So let's, actually, before we go into the use table, let me talk about that light manufacturing proposal. So Evan, if you could bring that up. Sorry to switch, but it might help the discussion on the use table. What I was thinking of is, as I looked at the definition of light manufacturing that we have, there are couple aspects of that definition that are more, if I think about them, more heavy manufacturing, like wood and paper manufacturing. I really don't consider those to be light manufacturing, given the paper plants that I've seen in northern Maine. The smell and
miles.
yeah. And so part of that, and then looking at the manufacturing that I think Lockheed Martin does, and some of the other more high-tech manufacturing, I wanted to maybe talk through some potential additions on the ultralight manufacturing to include more of those smaller, high-tech types of manufacturing that don't produce a lot of even internal noise and smoke and odor. And I think those, if you do some Google searching like I did, a lot of those end products are more high-end and higher cost products, like electronics and things like that. So I wanted to see if we can maybe redefine another category that might fit in this area and would kind of remove some of that, the heavier side of the light industrial. So the light industrial can stay in the industrial area because we really don't allow any heavy industrial in Chelmsford. So the heavier side of the light manufacturing would remain in IA, and then the lighter end of that could be pulled into the CB light. So I wanted, the definition may need to be tweaked a bit to make sure that we're getting the right areas. I think the two businesses that he mentioned that are industrial in that mill building would fit into this category. And I think Lockheed would as well. So I wanted to try and figure out if we can at least agree on the concept, and then we can adjust the definition as we move forward. So thoughts on the definition?
I can't see it all that wonderfully well, so.
I was looking at it. I think it looks like a good framework.
And so we could allow this type of manufacturing in that CB light and not the typical definition of light manufacturing.
Right.
Let's throw some examples at it and see what we think. How about a small furniture manufacturer, somebody that,
Like cabinetry?
cabinetry perhaps, or,
Yeah, that's why furniture is included in here.
all right. How about, I mean, because they will have some chemicals, they will have some things that could smell, they will have varnishes. Candle maker, similar situation.
Yep.
They would be, you feel they would fall within this pretty well.
That's what I'm envisioning.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
Yeah.
But I think
what
we
need
do
to
have
is
to figure out the
throw
wording.
examples at
Yeah.
it.
Does
just
say
see how
consumer
they-
goods,
So, Mike, just to clarify, the examples you gave would be retail sales of goods, the majority of which are produced or undergo processing on the premises.
Okay, so.
So that
if
is
they-
that's already an
Okay, if
allowed
they
use.
sell them there, but suppose they didn't sell them there.
I hear what you're saying, but the
You know?
the industrial, whether it's light manufacturing, ultralight, it's not a retail sales classification.
Right, agreed.
Zoll Medical, Analog,
And that's one of the nice things
Lockheed, I
that
mean,
CBL
they're not
gives you.
classified as retail sales under zoning.
All right,
So that, like, the cottage industries would fall under retail sales of goods or services, the majority of which are produced or
how
assembled.
about a tissue culture lab? I mean, that's pretty benign.
That's more of a R&D.
It's R&D,
Yeah, that's not
Can be,
manufacturing.
well, or it can be manufacturing, because a lot of things are propagated through tissue culturing nowadays, including plants, I mean, and sold.
Well, so would R&D and/or tissue culture be allowed in this ultralight?
Yeah, that's what I'm
I mean,
asking.
I don't have the use table up, but it's currently allowed by special permit in the CB.
Okay.
'Cause
And again, what's the principal use?
interestingly enough, it would be allowed by right in residential, as a farm,
If they're doing.
if it's over 440 square feet.
Tissue culture is a farm?
Yeah. You ought to see the USDA
I don't-
definitions. Plant tissue culture. I stumbled upon that one day when going through USDA regs.
I think
But,
that's
so
So
pushing
this
that
definition
on.
is specific to production.
Yeah.
R&D
Yes.
is separate.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's what the key on. And again, Lockheed would have to, determine what the principal use is. Is it light manufacturing? Is it R&D? And that's how it would be classified as a principal use.
Okay.
But my goal here was to make it so that that Lockheed use would be included,
Right.
but something like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of
A sawmill.
sawmill or
Yeah, or
leather factory would not be included here.
a leather factory wouldn't be included
Right.
where you're making the leather, but work with leather would be included.
Correct.
The artisanal
Artisanal.
aspect of it.
Yeah, I guess what you find in a lot of this is that there's the boundary between manufacturing and artisanal work may not be as clear all the time as we think. And that's why I mentioned the candles and the furniture.
Well, just point out, this definition does not,
Yeah, it doesn't.
it doesn't,
cover
it doesn't include manufacturing, it includes production,
production.
right? Isn't that the intent?
Difference between production and
I mean, light
manufacturing.
manufacturing says the indoor manufacturing,
Yeah.
and this says the indoor production. So I think it assumes that something's already,
I was using those interchangeably in my
oh,
definition.
okay.
Well, here we go.
But again, that's something we'll have to figure out.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think by definition, manufacturing has a more diverse set of impacts.
I mean, give you just an odd one. If you're making concrete bricks, that's probably manufacturing. If you're making concrete lawn gnomes, it's probably not. What's the difference? The shape of the block.
So this is why,
About that.
And I would think the volume and
And the
the
volume would have
equipment that
something
you're
to do.
using.
But we have nothing in here that talks
Right,
necessarily
and
to volume.
that's why I said we'll have to
Yeah,
tweak
we're gonna
this
have
to
to
figure it
I
out.
think this is the right track.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the concept is good because it's going to be less intrusive business uses next to
Yeah.
residential, so.
Anita, Saritha, any thoughts on this concept?
I think using the word manufacturing be really big, and I don't know if you guys can hear me okay, but
You're breaking up a
I think
bit.
that kind of opens up to a, all right, hold on. Can you hear me any better?
yes.
All right. I think the term of the use manufacturing opens it up a lot to a lot of different things to be there, and I don't know if that's the intention or not. There's a lot of interpretation to the word.
You mean versus
That's just me.
production?
Yeah, I mean, I work in manufacturing, and I can tell you production and manufacturing are pretty synonymous, so they go hand in hand. You manufacture things to produce product.
Right.
So it's just that, it's just a thought. It's just that I would be careful with verbiage, leaving it too wide open for interpretation to be things that you may not want there.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Anita, any thoughts?
No.
Okay.
Do we know of any other towns that have embarked on this journey before us and come up with something similar?
I don't know offhand. I would have to look into it. I imagine that some towns have gone beyond light and heavy.
Yeah.
I haven't done a lot of deep research on this.
Right.
It was just a quick thought that popped into my head late this week, and so I wanted to kind of throw it out there
Maybe we
before
can
I
ask
started
NEMCOG.
digging.
And
If they know of
Yeah.
anyone.
Yeah, I can reach out to them.
another way to handle the problem, by the way, is to make it by special permit and lay more detailed descriptions of what you want and don't want in the special permit criteria.
Yeah.
I mean, now, and when you do that, you can differentiate between the concrete blocks and the lawn gnomes.
The other option is try to include in the definition limitations on potential impacts. So above and beyond indoor,
Right.
That's why I was.
how many loading docks or and I think we understand the Zolls, the Analog, Lockheed, they have limited loading docks, at least in Chelmsford. I was going to say size, but these are all large facilities. But for CB Light, Lockheed is a lot smaller than what's on 129. So maybe a not to exceed size. There's probably some other.
Is there sound limitations and things like that you can impart to
I mean, this says
ensure
indoor.
that,
This says indoor, so it is. I think it's assumed that.
But I mean, most places can make noise outside as well. I mean, if it's indoors, but they're storing things outdoors to bring them in, there could be noise associated with that.
Yeah, I think it's worth just giving some more consideration to.
Yep. Okay. I can do some digging. Evan, if you can
Yep.
reach out to NEMCOG on that. All right.
Cool.
Thank you, everyone. Now we'll move on to the slides again. Evan, is there any way you can increase the size of that?
Looks like I may have to download it.
All right.
Oops, not that one. This one. Is it this right here? Nope, not that.
Someone's loud typing.
Display settings, Chris?
Actually, you've got it on.
Oh, okay, there we go. Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. Okay.
You just need to advance it.
Where are we going?
Dimensional requirements. So these were the ones that Anita had highlighted last time. Are we good with these?
Well, I am, because
Chris, are these, but we made changes to these, right?
That's what I was trying to figure out. I didn't track any of the changes other than the green ones that I had put in there. So if you
Okay.
have changes, let's make note of them now.
So, yeah, all right, why don't we table this until, I didn't realize that you were looking for the new presentation. Do you want, I will put all the new changes into slides with the latest and greatest.
All right,
And just remember, there are two-dimensional tables that we've been talking about.
yeah.
I don't recall this one being changed.
Right.
I'm happy to look up,
The more we can finalize tonight, the better.
well, if you want to share, let me share a screen and I can put up the updates here.
I think there was some discussion about the side and rear setbacks, the note 4, which is to increase to 100 feet. If it's abutting residential. And I think we were
realizing that would be
talking, we
problematic.
thought that might be problematic. But then the SAOD does provide you some relief, so as a non-SAOD solution, then it may be okay. It's definitely borrowing from the IA, whereas the CB it's less restrictive. The CB, I think, is increased by 20 feet.
So Beth, I have NA on here.
What do you have NA on?
I think Anita's looking at the COID.
NA.
We're looking at slide 3, Anita, the underlying dimensional requirements, not the overlay.
Yep. That's what I have NA on it.
Which one do you have NA?
CB light. See how CB has 0?
Not on this slide.
CB light.
The CB has 0, and if you go over, she's talking about
Yep.
depth.
and
Oh, that
CB
one, the-
Light
okay.
has 150.
150.
I have NA on it.
So the depth is NA. Okay.
Yeah, I forget why we said that though.
Because some of
The lots are
the
small.
lots are irregular and small.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you want me to share my screen? Want to allow me to share and I can share it?
Yeah, if Evan can do that.
Okay, you should have it.
You see my screen?
Yep. Any way to put that on the large screen?
I don't have that capability.
Can you make it
You're
bigger,
not
Anita?
that
Yeah, Anita, if you could make it bigger.
Sure. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot better.
Yep.
I can see it great.
Should have all been on Zoom tonight.
Saritha's rubbing it in.
Okay, so that looks like it's the only change.
Yeah, we should address the note, though, on side and rear yard requirements. Because basically you're adopting the 100-foot for IA versus the 20-foot from CB. So I think you would want to go somewhere in between.
So we would add a 7th note.
Yeah.
For here? NA 7?
Nope. For the side or
setback
rear
and side,
setback?
right?
Yeah, side and rear setbacks both have the note 4, which is that when it's abutting residential, it increases to 100 feet. And
Yep.
the CB has note 6, which is that it increases by 20 feet.
So we would want to add a note 7 for that side and rear and increase.
Some numbers that we consider appropriate.
Some number between 60 and 100,
Or
because
20
it's
and a
20 plus, is 40 plus 20 note 6. If you applied note 6, you add 20, so it'd be 60
Yeah.
for the side. Yeah, but if you apply note 6, it's 100. You go to 100, you don't add 100.
Yeah.
Do you want to add it by 75? Does that work? Because that's between 60 and 100.
Would the lots be able to accommodate that?
I'm gonna say, because that, one of those lots.
Well,
is
if they couldn't, they would be asking for a variance, right? Is that
Right,
what
that's a
happens?
Pre-existing non-conforming.
Or use COID.
Or, yeah,
Yeah, because that.
yeah, and I think we already agreed we were gonna we agreed to say on applying.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
For precisely that reason.
so we would look to provide that kind of relief in SEOD.
So we don't need to artificially bring this too low.
Right. This is
So-
as right. So
Or
I
too
think,
high.
I think 75 makes sense.
That's
Yeah.
as good as anything.
Why wouldn't you just keep it at 100 then?
Because we're really trying to come up with something that's between, we're CB light, right? So if
Okay.
CB itself is add 20, why would
So
we?
80? 80?
Let's just stop throwing out numbers.
You don't want noise. Well, no, you don't. I mean, I'm thinking about the noise, right? Because that's a lot of what the setbacks are for, is not putting it right in people's faces,
Right.
right? When you're in a residential property. So
Right.
how do you protect that? Like
Well,
what?
we've
what is
already
a good
done some
number?
of that with the uses.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
Yeah, we're trying to
come back
make
to the
low noise
contractor yard.
uses.
right, yeah.
And I think as much of it as the visual effect and the light. And
So are people comfortable with 80?
80,
then getting-
60, 70,
And then getting
I like
relief?
even numbers. Yes.
So the
Why?
footnote should not read increased by 70, increased by 80, it should be increased by 40.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
For a total
Got
of
it.
80.
All right, now I
Or
understand.
70.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, got it. Now I
Okay.
understand. Thank you.
All right. All right, so are people comfortable with this?
Yeah.
And Anita, please, when you're making these revisions, we need to track them so that we can present them, the modifications to town meeting. So somehow either highlight them or underline them.
Well, it's going to be the
Strike.
entire column.
Yeah, but like
Yes.
adding the new
Well,
column
this is a
seven,
new-
the footnote 7, somehow we're gonna need to,
Okay.
Yeah.
Highlight that.
So anything that you're not editing outside of the CB light column, we would need to highlight.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is a new one.
Yeah.
All right.
New note.
All right. All right, so we'll consider that done. And then if you can go to the overlay sheet,
Is that slide 7?
that is slide 7 for those following on slides. And Anita, if you can really increase that.
Yep.
All right, so the,
Trying to have the same
so the depth,
meaning side by side.
the depth we talked about last meeting as being NA.
Yep.
And then minimum yard requirements. Down a little bit further, Anita. 20. And then we had 32 and 20 with an increase, footnote, increase to 25 minimum or abutting residential.
Yep.
But that,
Which is illogical.
yeah, that doesn't, so we have to delete 6 on the 32. So on the distance of 32, oh, you did, okay. So
There is
that,
no, yeah, there's
yeah.
no fix there.
so Anita did fix that on hers.
Okay.
24, 20, both with footnote 6, and then
What
30.
is footnote 7? What's footnote 7 say?
There is no footnote
increase, don't we just
7.
create, oh. That
Increased
was
by
for the other
40.
slide, though.
Yeah, that was for the other slide.
To make it 40.
You just need to
Increase
delete-
by 40
Oh,
to
yeah, that
80.
came from the other side. That's right. That pulled from, sorry. So do you want it to be 7?
No,
No, there should be no footnote 7 on this one,
only on
Okay.
the.
only on the other one.
previous one.
So this just needs to be 4 deck. I'm not pulling it on the other side.
It was part of like the formatting.
All right, do people see any issues, any other issues with these dimensions? Anita, could you do me a favor and increase that a little bit more?
Get my binoculars.
Maybe one more? Screens are a little bit smaller in here. Thank you.
The big one.
That's good. Any concerns with any of this table that people can see jumping out at them?
No, but I left my numbers at home.
What is which one, is this Sayad?
Yeah.
Okay.
This won't be the last
Right.
time we do this anyway. I mean, it's just for the first draft of the
Right.
Can you scroll
public
down?
hearing.
Yeah.
Anita, can you scroll down to the rear? Yard requirement?
Where?
You had it down, the rear
Oh.
yard. Yep.
There we go.
Right here.
So the, so the Sayad by right is 24, and if it abuts residential, it goes to 25?
Minimum.
25 minimum. Can you, can you scroll it up a little bit to the rear
They're all minimums, right?
thing? Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, CB is 16, is that right? And
Yep.
IA is 24, and we want to be 24, it goes up to 25 for residential. I mean, that seems kind of silly, but whatever.
I know, so that's going up
A foot.
by one
One.
on that one? If
Yeah,
it's
yeah. Oh, you're next to
Yeah,
a
that's
residential.
IA
Okay,
too.
we'll give you another foot.
Right, so that's the same as IA,
Right. Right.
which, again,
What does note 4
Unless we-
say on IA? Because it says 24 with 4. What was 4?
Increase to
Oh.
100.
Increase to 100.
so
100,
that
so
maybe
that-
we want,
Yes, I think
that maybe we want 4.
I think we
Make
want
it
it to,
4?
I think we want it to go up higher than 25, don't we?
Yeah, well, it looks
Yeah.
like on IA it's goes up to 100, right? And
Right.
are you going in between on this one, like the last one?
I'm not sure we need 100 feet.
I don't think
No,
so.
no, I don't think so. I mean,
We won't get any building anywhere.
I mean, you get,
What about that
I'm just
side?
looking at this
What about the
lot.
side up above?
Little
the
tiny
lot?
postage stamps.
What was that, Saritha?
The side one up above, is that one increases to 25? Is that for side feet for side?
by special permit, is that the, I can't read if that's the, what note that is.
Yeah.
But that one only goes from 20 to 25, and those other ones, right? 6 goes to
Yeah.
25. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, the thing too is look at the rear, look at the by right, and then look at the special permit. So it's 30, right now it's 30, 24, 20. Right, so you want your middle one to be somewhere in between the 30 and the 20, right? And then you also want to make sure that it's somewhere between CB, which is 16, the by right, Sayad.
But I don't think these are envisioning
24.
a village setting
No.
where everything's, like, this is for, Riverneck Road or something. Like, we're not gonna get 100 feet anywhere here.
You know, I'm not proposing 100 feet. 100 feet doesn't make sense only because you start at 30, and then you go down to 24, and then you go to 20. Just walk in the door, say odd, so I think I think you want the numbers to jive, I guess is what I'm saying. So you want the number, the by right number to be between the one above it and the one below it, and you want it to be between the one on the left of it and the one on the far right of it. Right? That's kind of the
So
the
right
bounds
now-
bounds of where we want the value to be, right?
So right now, when you're looking at COs by special permit, rear and feet, if I'm looking at this right, it's CB at 10.6 is 100? Oh, no, that was 25, right?
25.
Yeah.
This is 25.
And then the IA is, that one is 20, but goes up to 100.
Right, when it abuts residential,
You're-
yeah,
So you're 25 to 100
right,
at max. So you want to be between there for CB light.
right.
Yeah, I think it should be like.
And then we're
And you
good.
want to be close, and we think we want to be closer to CB than we are to IA, because we're specifically trying to restrict the uses of CB light to be closer to, actually, it's lighter than CB. It's really something between CB and CA, but staying close to CB, I think, makes sense to some degree. So,
Do you have any recommendations for numbers?
I want to go to 30, but,
I think 30.
I know that's what I
Don't go
was
above
thinking
that.
as well. It's 30.
okay, okay. So there's
I-
24 and goes to 30, okay. And then the
Should we just put
bottom,
30 here? No.
The bottom, I think it was the bottom one, wasn't it?
no, it was the by right one.
Yeah.
By right.
That's
That has to be the middle number at the by right.
That's
'cause
20,
now the-
it's, but Anita, it's 24,
In
but
IA.
then when it's abutting residential, it goes to 30. So that way, if you're
So
not,
it needs a new note.
yeah, so it needs a note, because otherwise, if it wasn't abutting residential, you're being more restrictive, and we didn't want to do that,
So this would be 24 with the note 7.
yeah.
A new note 7, or maybe
Yep.
we should make
Well,
this
it's,
8?
yeah, because
You
it's
note
say
seven.
on,
Page, a
it's,
different,
yeah, it's a different table, so it's a different note system, note number,
So this increases to 30.
yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And then,
And then the special permit is 20, and then that would go to 25, is that right? Note 4?
Footnote 4, it's for
No,
100.
no.
No, it's
Lot
100,
six.
okay. So we want that one to
Go to 6, increase to 25.
Yeah.
25, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And what about this one? Note 7,
Which one?
One's the-
No, we're
the
good.
one pink.
The side
Side.
by right? Or a side special permit?
20 to special, to 25.
Yeah, 20
Yeah,
to
that's what I
25.
would
Five.
do.
Six.
That's what I would do,
Yep.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Because that's consistent with CA and CB. They have the same thing for rear and side by permit.
Okay. Any other concerns on this table? Excellent. Moving on.
Thinking of this as a first pass. I mean, well,
Yes.
second pass.
Well, for this would be the final draft to then take it to the next stage, which is more of a public hearing. So this is what we would be presenting at public hearing. All right, use table.
Oh, did you want me to go through that?
No, I think I've got this one. Let's try and use the slides, and if you see something that's different, we can call it out. So I think the biggest question here is on the residential items. The multifamily, owner-occupied boarding house, and then the line 8, A, B, C, D on this slide. The facilitated and independent and senior living facilities. I have voiced my opinion that I don't think we should have residential in this area, but I would like to hear others' thoughts.
I mean, I remember discussions before about liking mixed use, residential with commercial. And actually, we kind of missed the opportunity to bring that up with the Chelmsford Plaza when they were here, asked that question, but, I mean, it's in SAOD. So SAOD does have provision for housing. So you don't necessarily have to include it in the as-right. So, either way.
My concern is that if we're using this as a buffer between residential and industrial, I'm not sure putting residential in the buffer between residential and industrial makes a lot of sense.
I don't know. I mean, again, if we're talking about a village, a village picture, if we had, office or retail on the first floor and housing on the
Right.
second
Right.
or third floor above, I think that would be
A mixed
still
use.
bufferish.
Yeah, mixed use would, I think
Yeah.
would be appropriate, yeah.
But I think we could accomplish that in the overlay, not necessarily in the underlying zoning.
Oh, that's in the light. No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Because we would be using this in
Good
other
point.
areas where
Yep.
you wouldn't necessarily want
Right.
that.
That's true. That's a good point.
What kind of flexibility?
Yeah, I'm
does-
with Chris on this. I would, because we have it in like the overlays for the ability for that, so.
Yeah.
I agree.
Does anyone,
Same with the
If we're
boarding
gonna-
house owner occupied, I would keep that a no.
does anyone not agree that, on putting no on these?
That made my brain hurt.
I know. Oh, like, wait a minute, what did he just ask?
So I'm proposing to put no on these residential uses.
You on that one.
Are we okay with that?
Just the way you worded it, I'm like,
Double
hold, I've
negative.
lost
yes
it.
to no.
I know. So I'm proposing that we put no on those, on line 8, and keep the no's on the multifamily and the owner occupied on the underlying zoning.
I
Is there
agree
anyone
with you
that
there.
does
agree
not
with
agree
that.
with that?
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's acceptable.
All right, Sarita and Anita, you okay with that? I think I heard yes on.
Yep. Yeah, right. I'm good
Okay.
with that.
All right, so we'll make those changes. The next slide.
Again, kind of an aside, but if we're gonna go take a run at some point at the overlays, I personally might want to make it so you couldn't just do housing. If you're gonna do housing in the villages, that there had to be something.
Some commercial
On the
thing
first floor.
associated, yeah.
Yep, that can be our next,
We
Yeah.
tried to do that.
next item,
Yeah, that'll be our next project.
Yeah.
I like that.
one of the next projects.
One project at a time.
All right, on the next slide, we have, again, the nursing rehabilitation home, so I'd propose putting a no on that one for the same reason. And then the parking garage and structure, we had planning board.
Yeah,
I think
because
that makes sense.
we're
Now the-
specifically maybe gonna
So I
be
had a
using
note on
this
that
for. plan-
limitation with limitation with size and height. Did we put a limitation on that?
What's the
You're
height
not treating it any
limitation?
differently than any
Yeah.
other structure.
What's the
Yeah.
current limitation for height in this, in this
Didn't I say 3?
I think you guys have it as
Three.
35, don't you?
stories, right?
3 stories.
Yeah,
3 stories.
that's fine, let's leave that.
Okay.
But wait, can we go back to the nursing convalescent or rehabilitation home? Because that would not be covered under SAOD.
Correct, it would not be.
Right. And it is allowed by permit in CB and IA. So why would we exclude
I
it
think
from
Chris
this
was,
one?
you were viewing it similar to the specialized housing, senior housing, assisted living
Yeah,
in the previous slide.
I'm curious as to why those are different.
I'd have to look closer at the definition, but
Yeah. So I'm not, right now, I'm not recommending we change the CB and IA. Not ruling it out in the future,
Yeah.
but in terms of allowing it in this for the reason that we're
Yeah.
using this zoning, I'm not sure I would put it in there. Do you feel differently, Joel? I think it makes sense to keep it in the CB.
I think as a sort of a normal residential, I would say no, but if it's a sort of special, especially special, like a care kind of residential, I think that's different.
I don't necessarily like making it more restrictive than we're trying to combine two things, and we're making it more restrictive than either. That doesn't seem
Yeah.
what we're trying to do.
That's the only part that sort of bothers me, is it's making it more restrictive than the things
Yeah, I
that
don't
we
know.
were
I agree
thinking
with
we
you.
were between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you're making this one more correct than what you've had previously.
Yeah, yeah,
I like looking at it that way.
that's a good way to look at it too.
Because in the future, I would like to maybe change the IA one
Yeah,
to no.
Yeah.
And then
Right,
it
and then
would,
this would align for that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If you make it
Yeah.
this way now.
yeah.
Okay.
this would be like the first step towards doing that instead of allowing it now and then changing it later.
Yeah.
Are people okay with that?
I'm on the fence. I'm
Yep.
not convinced either way yet. Because those are more institutional uses, I guess is what I would say. And that seems.
I agree,
more
except it's
institutional use.
institutional residential, and it's the residential thing that bothers me, that
Yeah, that's
right
not a-
next to an
that's not-
industrial warehouse.
This,
and-
Yeah, except for we're
Would
making it
that-
an industrial light. So it'd be less objectionable than what we're.
But it would
current-
still be next to industrial.
I mean, I guess for me,
That's
like
my point.
residential, you're just assuming that people are gonna wanna be outside, that they're gonna wanna be making use of their property, have a neighborhood, things like that. But if it's institutional residential, that's not the case.
Right.
So you don't have that. So now you're concerned about, well, will they be affected by the uses that are going on around them? But again, we just were saying that these are uses that we thought would be okay to be adjacent to residential.
Right.
So it seems to me that an institutional residential use would seem like that would fit.
Like it would be less objectionable than a regular residential.
Except if I'm looking at it the other way, this use being next to an industrial,
Yeah,
to me, is not okay.
yeah.
Next to
If this-
a residential, which is why I would like it to continue in the CB, is okay, but not next to the IA.
Yeah.
would this be something that would be like adult daycare as well? Like, is that one of the things that would be underneath this category?
It looks like, no, it
Assisted
looks like it's
living or-
residential. So nursing home,
Assisted
rehab
living.
facility where
All
people.
daycare we have is
Could it
PB.
be something underneath the PB like you did with the others where that requires I mean, what do they come to the planning board and ask? Is
Yeah,
that how those
That's a good
ones
thought.
work?
Well, except if you look at it, if they come before us and they're right next to a property that then becomes a by right industrial use, that's where the problem becomes. It's not where you're putting the nursing home, it's if the nursing home's already in that location and then a heavy industrial or a light industrial use comes right next to it.
Right.
We have some situations like that on Turnpike.
Maybe these institutional residential uses, maybe you table until you identify specific geographic locations. It's still not clear to me to what extent you're expanding beyond Kate's Corner and the mill from earlier. I don't know if this exercise, the town meeting, is going to include the entire review of the entire zoning map.
So for me, I'm looking at any location I would put this. I would not want a nursing home right next to a warehouse.
A warehouse.
Agreed, but what if
IA.
that existing IA that has a warehouse is rezoned to CB Light? Is that not what we're trying to do?
Yeah.
But the CB light could still be next to a warehouse.
Correct, at some
my
point,
point.
at some point you draw a line, but we don't know where those are and how many of them are yet.
Right, but I'm okay with the nursing home on the other side of this buffer in the CB and the residential,
I get it, yeah.
but I'm not okay
Not in
with
the
the
CB.
resident, with
I
that
get it,
in the
yep.
buffer itself, which is next to the
Yep.
industrial.
Yep.
I mean, it makes sense to say no off of the things that you said no to on the previous page. I mean, that matches with this.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it matches with that. But if we were to do it as it is in CB and IA, it would be a Board of Appeals, so it would not be a yes by right, but it would be something that would be looked at, but by the Board of Appeals, not by us.
And like I said, I'm less concerned with a nursing home going in and choosing their location. That's fine. But if a nursing home's already there, and then they're right next to an IA zone
Woody's Wood Processing Center.
that comes in by right,
Starts
and they
hammering
have no
away
choice.
at 6 a.m., yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. I'm just not fully convinced yet.
So if people are okay with putting the no on this for now, and then we can
Revisit it.
revisit it
Rehash
in
it, yeah.
public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to keep moving? All right, next slide. I did correct these based on my notes. So bank or financial agency with drive-through was planning board, and without was a yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Adult daycare is planning board, and parking lot accessory use was planning board.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's good.
Okay?
Still need to define
I was going to say.
parking lot accessory use.
Yeah, we need to define that. Within so many feet of the principal use. Whatever that number is.
Who would like to take that definition on for the next meeting?
Really not a definition, like a footnote, I think, right?
Is it a footnote?
A footnote, yeah,
Yeah.
with a measurement.
Who wants to take that on?
I can do that.
Okay.
I'm not quite
Start
sure I
with
understand the
100.
question,
Anybody
so
else?
I'm not going to take it.
And Joel, you may want to look at the parking bylaw. There's a off-site shared parking dimension. I think it's like within 500 feet.
Okay. And did Ann share something last time about that? You did? Okay. Can she
you share
tell
it
us
again?
what it was? So I don't have to go back and watch the video.
Sure, no problem. Ann Soboleski from Prince Bell for Lockheed Martin. I believe it is the town of Wayland has language in their zoning bylaw. I think it is 500 feet. So you can have accessory parking as long as it's within 500 feet of the principal use or property of the same owner. I think they define it that way.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
I'll look that up too.
All right. And then the next slide, it was only the item 22 that needed the number. All right. So Anita, if you can make those changes and then we can update the slides, that'd be great. All right. So let's jump to the next slide after this.
Slide 13,
14.
14.
All right, so what I did here is I took the recommendations from Anita and Mike, along with the Lockheed Martin items, along with the discussion, and kind of put it all together. Made some interpretations, which may or may not be 100% accurate. And this is what I came up with.
Did I miss this in the?
No, I added this. I pulled everything together that we had talked about.
Okay.
So that we're-
That's an
So
important thing
were you
for me to miss.
designated the residences on the west as being RB?
Sorry, I printed it off.
And you're saying that their entire property becomes RB?
Yeah,
Okay, so,
yeah. So that's how to interpret these labels is,
okay. So
Um,
the current Maxwell's property, if you were to, as it is zoned now, if are you, this is a question, Evan, are you bound by the restriction of abutting residential as far as like a side yard setback? Because technically they're not abutting residential. Technically, they're abutting CB currently, right?
Currently, right.
Yeah. So if you bring residential all the way up to the property line, now you've
Right. Now
added
you've
the
got-
residential restriction to
Now
that
you get all those footnotes.
part. So that was the only thing I was questioning was, do you not want to bring the RB fully up to the property line?
So I interpret this exercise to try to clean up the zoning map.
Yes.
Yep.
To answer your question, Joel, once, any time prior to town meeting vote, a private property owner can file an A&R plan to freeze the zoning. So they have legal mechanisms to lock in the zoning where they're not abutting residential. And then that zoning freeze is good for either 6 years or 8 years, depending upon what submission they make to the planning board.
But I thought it was you freeze the zoning on your property, not the zoning on somebody else's property, and that's the issue here, right? The issue here is that they're not concerned about their property, they're concerned about the fact that the abutting property is currently zone CB and will become RB, and thereby.
Yeah, so that's why I mentioned at the last meeting, if you choose to fix the zoning map, they're either going to come in as a pre-existing non-conforming structure.
Right. Which there isn't one there now, so.
No,
Not
no,
down in that
they-
area. I feel like if you wanted to put up a shed, like a building structure to
Right,
house some
right,
whatever.
Right. So
and-
this is where ultimately, hopefully the plan between creating the CB light, fixing the use table, applying reasonable dimensional and applying COID, that combination of tools, the hope and desire is that when a property owner comes in, that the board has the ability to work with it. Again, understanding that this is a good example. And if you apply it to, the mill example, it's the same difference. All of these sites are currently challenged with zoning compliance, and they will be. So the combination of tools is intended to send a message to a developer that we will work with you, reasonably work with you. But you're making it, you're just because the dimensional table says increase to 100, you're not going to be able to apply that.
Mm-hmm.
You're either not going to be able to apply it legally because they're going to come in and say we're already pre-existing non-conforming, or we're coming in under COID, and to what extent do you have the willingness to work with us? So that's why I'm saying, that footnote on 100 feet is usually for like a vacant piece of property, like on River Neck. But for redevelopment, you can't apply it now, and you won't really be able to apply it moving forward.
Right.
But there should be some relief in the overlay.
Yeah, the overlay
Given-
provides
yeah.
significant relief. I mean, that's why it doesn't, in the IA zoning district, I think it applied the 100-foot setback. Those lots are really big,
Right.
but I don't think it applied a 100-foot setback in the CB.
Right.
In this village.
Right.
Well, I would be interested in Lockheed's analysis if they were so inclined to look at what the ramifications would be of this proposal and whether they think that having the zone extend past their property line and how far, or whether they think it's adequate with the proposed zoning that we're looking at. I'd be interested in that input.
Now, these properties on this, like the long end of the CB light they're putting in there, are they currently RB? I thought they were something different.
Yeah, so the front half of the properties on Parkerville are RB.
Yeah.
The back half are CB.
CB.
Because I remember the owner of the first home wants to
He's
keep it
mostly
CB.
CB, actually.
Yeah, he's mostly CB except for that little corner.
He mentioned that he had a business historically.
Yes.
Right.
No longer does.
Right, but it was largely agricultural, and I think that he was already covered under the agricultural.
All right, just checking.
He's likely lost all grandfathering status, unless he has an active ag use.
Oh, right, okay.
And then the proposal to change the town-owned lots to public,
I like that.
extend the lot above the public to CA towards the back of that property. Extend the public on the Pond Street to the back. So we are running short on time. Let's table this, give it some thought. We'll ask for Lockheed's feedback for the next meeting. And are there any other comments or questions from the board before I open it up briefly to the public? Okay. Anyone from the public want to speak briefly?
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Anthony Pittman. I'm the general manager for the Lockheed Martin site located in Chelmsford on 16 Maple Road. Just a quick update. Last time I spoke with you, it was about a month ago when we actually formally expressed our interest in 24 Maple. Just a quick update. I know it's been a little bit of a journey with concurrency of zoning and then negotiating and making a business case, but happy to share that as of yesterday, we did get our internal approval to proceed with negotiations with the 24 Maple Road broker and seller. So we officially submitted a couple hours ago the letter of intent to the broker. So we're going to start that process as well. And then we did take the action for the next meeting to kind of see how all this data is overlaying with our concepts, because as we mentioned before, we want to be transparent with our neighbors, but we've got to be compliant to the zoning, and we've got to try to make it all match. So we've got the action to make sure we overlay it. Yep, yep. Okay. So we'll put some thought and see how it all plays together and see if we can present that.
Okay, thank you.
And just back to Joel's question, I'm going to ask council that question,
Thank you.
because you make a good point. If the abutting land is being rezoned, and it has a direct impact, to what extent would a zoning freeze cover the adjacent parcel?
Yeah, okay. All right, so on this topic, next meeting, we will
I think
hear.
someone else wants to speak.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry about that. Again, I'm Ann Soboleski from Prince-Lo Bell for Lockheed Martin. I just had a couple of comments, thoughts to make based on the proposed definition that you were talking about for this kind of ultralight manufacturing. So one of the things that was in there, you mentioned, wholesale sales or consumer sales. And so wholesale sales wouldn't necessarily cover what my client sells. They're not a wholesaler. The other thing that I would say is that what you're doing by adding that in is you're creating, a definition of what this use is based on who the ultimate consumer is of the product that is being created, which you don't have in the other two districts. So you're ratcheting down something. In that way, you would want to make sure that you're not, creating potential problems by doing that when you don't have it in the other two. And then the other thing I'd say is that, where you've got that use of moderate amounts of products and smaller scale, those kinds of words are subject to, subjective interpretation of what's going on, and you don't really have them in the other two sections. So it's possible that maybe not us, because you know what we do, and we're here being transparent, but somebody in the future could have a use that might be legitimate, and a different board could say, oh no, that's not what we mean when we say, smaller scale or moderate amounts. So it's kind of judgmental, that language. The only other thing I wanted to say is, when I was here the last time, and we were talking about the setbacks, I know we were going through the setbacks again today, and there is the flexibility with the COD. But again, that Maxwell site is a very, very strange property, and I'm sure there are other properties that are also very strange. And I don't know whether, maybe not necessarily us, but just looking towards you applying this in other districts also. You know, maybe you have somebody who wants to do a redevelopment that it's not a full COD, and you could conceivably in the table, in the base zoning setback table, give yourself the flexibility if they come to you for a site plan review to modify some of those side or rear yard setbacks. So I very quickly typed this up, and I can give it to you. This is just a rough draft, but you could say something like the planning board shall have the discretion to reduce setback or screening requirements during the site plan review process for redevelopment projects on property located within the CBLT zoning district. That would give you more flexibility just overall. It's just a thought.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. She makes some good points.
Yeah.
Words like moderate and small scale are just asking for a fight in Superior Court.
That's why it's a quick draft.
You know? They're just asking for a fight.
All right. Anyone else? All right. So for next meeting, we will really dig into the properties and assigning the zoning. We will finish the discussion on the parking lot footnote that Joel will give us. We'll get the feedback from Lockheed Martin. And I'm hoping to wrap this up next meeting for that. And then we can start addressing the mill as well next meeting.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
Sounds
Now,
good.
you guys have to fly?
I want to finish the rest of this meeting really quick, and then
All right.
we'll take off.
Start talking fast.
Should we also, the rest of us be looking at the area around the mill to see if there's other
Yes.
things we want to?
Yes, look at that entire area around the mills, because as I was looking at some of we would end up doing something similar as we're doing here. It wouldn't be just that one property, it would be looking at,
You should look at this map that's attached to the agenda.
Okay.
This highlights,
I had a hard time with that, so I went into the GIS for that space, similar to what we did on this, and I just looked at the, that area of the GIS with the zoning overlay on it, and then looked at how we might be able to adjust some of the areas.
Is that IA abutting residential?
This
Oh,
is IA.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
No, I really like that.
Because the last map had CB and IA.
Yeah, this is the IA.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
is that attached to the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so
Twice.
the new one
I
is,
think twice. Just to make
Wanted
sure.
to make sure you saw it, Joel.
Just to make sure.
all right. Liaison updates.
Say Center Village didn't meet 2 weeks ago, so nothing to update you there.
Last week, I had my first NIMCOG meeting as the new liaison to that. Won't get into too much specifics, but it was good. We know Kelly and we know Chris from previous experience with some of they've assisted us with MBTA zoning, and it was good to meet the group.
Okay. Any other updates? Anita, Sarita?
Yeah, and Vinyl Square, Vinyl Square met last night. They reelected members. Mike was hanging on to that one, which was fun. There was a lot of concern from in Vinyl Square when they were talking about I don't have the letter that they received. I didn't get that yet, but they were talking about, they believe it was the parking being reduced for electric cars. And there was big concerns about the redevelopment taking up parking that a lot of the business owners were concerned with in the area because they said parking's already pretty constrained there. There was another comment about the public parking there. Apparently the back half of the public parking area there is on a 25-year lease, and the lease is up next year, and it has new owners. So there was, again, concern with not exactly sure what's going to happen with that parking as well. They're not meeting again until June, but they just brought up a couple other smaller things. I don't know what you all normally report out on these liaison things, like what information you want to know. And if that helps.
That was pretty good.
Yeah,
that's
that was
great.
good.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's plenty of parking at Paylett, isn't there?
come on down.
Wow.
Plenty of parking where?
Hail it.
Drive.
Yeah.
All right.
Dig.
You're fresh.
All right.
Yeah.
For Concom.
Oh, one more thing.
yep.
I guess sorry.
Go ahead.
One more thing. I guess the clock that they were installing in there, they did get the funding for. It's on order and will be installed. So that was the only other thing I had.
Excellent. For Concom, they didn't have any regulatory items last night, but they did do a lot of discussion. They did their gap analysis and submitted it. They're trying to figure out what the next steps are, I guess. So they're reaching out to Board of Health to figure that out. They're looking to start a student intern program with a number of environmental studies students at the local universities. So that's kind of cool.
That's great.
Carl did a great presentation on land management summary, an inventory of all their sites and what needs to be done related to some of the upkeep that they're looking at doing. They did vote to terminate the Concom MOU with costs last night, and they're looking at a different way of maintaining their properties. And I think that's it. They'll be talking about that more in the next meeting. All right. I did submit the questionnaire. I compiled the answers that I got, added some of my own. The document is linked to the agenda tonight if you want to take a look. Pretty consistent to what we've been talking about in the meetings, no big surprises. But as the Concom is, I'm very interested to see what the next steps are. I'm hoping it's just more discussion and more analysis and not just compiling this and making a recommendation. So if you have any insight into that from the Board of Health, it'd be good to
Yeah, I'll let you know.
find out from them what the next step is.
They don't talk a lot, but
Or maybe if you could ask them. It would also be good to get a plan from them of what the process is going to be.
I'll ask.
Thanks.
That'd be great. And thank you guys for compiling and collating and
Not a problem.
having those answers.
All right, the meeting minutes.
I will give you a motion to accept them.
No, I will not.
Nope.
Oh, you got a problem? What
We're
problem
gonna
you
table,
find?
table these again?
Yeah, table them again. What I would like to do is, if you've got corrections, please send them to Evan, Becky, and myself before the next meeting,
Okay.
hopefully in the next week, so that Becky can actually make the updates and then get us,
It's Anita and Mike that did the,
I know,
it's not
Yes,
Joel and Mike.
that's true.
that keeps coming up.
Anita and Mike.
And as I said, I am not entirely sure that who moved and who seconded isn't reversed on an awful lot of those.
So
I don't think it matters.
if you could
I can't
shoot
remember.
us an email, Becky, Evan, and myself, with those concerns, within the next week, so that Becky can make the edits, and then we can get a clean version for next meeting, I'd appreciate it. All right, any anything that of special note for our next meeting? Any new projects coming in so far?
Not that I'm aware of.
Cool.
So what is on the agenda for next
Is
meeting?
it,
Kate's Corner,
That's it?
the CB Light discussion.
Okay.
I'm sure, there'll be maybe an
Something will
administrative
come up.
item or something, yeah.
We gotta come up with a name.
did you go to,
CB Light is not a good name.
What's that, Anita?
I was just gonna mention if we're gonna do other business or new business. I did attend the, neighborhood meeting for the River Neck Road project yesterday.
Oh, good.
Yep, there was about, I would say like, I don't know, like 12 or so neighbors that did come and voice their concerns. The developer listened to them. You know, similar concerns from what we had with the distribution center with the trucks.
Okay.
And they said they would be back probably submitting something in 4 to 6 weeks.
So,
And one thing they did say was that they were going to send out a letter to the abutters when they were going to have the meeting, the next meeting that was going to be scheduled with the planning board.
okay. Thank you. I will take a motion to adjourn.
I can do that.
I'll second.
Motion by Mike, second by Deirdre. Actually, it's a roll call vote because we've got 2 people on Zoom. So, Sarita?
I'm not allowed to vote.
Yes, you're right. Thank you. Anita?
Yay, yes.
Marcy?
Yes.
Deirdre?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Joel? Mike?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.